Hey, what's good, fam? Agent O here, and I've been meaning to get back into doing some movie reviews. Mainly just the uh, comic book movies that I wanted to start reviewing, and I figured what better way to jump back into that than to do a movie that has been highly, highly anticipated, not just by myself, but by a lot of people, judging from the pre-order ticket sales being some of the highest that have come out in a long time. And that movie, of course, I'm talking about is Black Panther. I can't say I've been waiting for it for a long time. I've been waiting for it for literally years, probably like 10 years. Since they started the MCU, I was waiting for a Black Panther movie. Waiting in the hopes that they'd actually do it. It's finally here, much to a lot of people who thought it would never happen, and yet here we are. So I definitely want to drop in my 2 cents now that it's out for the masses and those of us plebes that had to wait for the official release and didn't get access to the premiere or early review access. I could finally got out, so I can put in what I think. And like I say in all my reviews, don't watch reviews. Go watch the movie, formulate your own opinion, and then come back and look at the reviews to maybe compare notes, to see what other people thought, see if how your thoughts match up with others, and maybe get a perspective that you didn't quite get that might open your mind a bit. Because we all watch things for different reasons, and we all have our own opinions. We all know what we like, and what we like might not be what someone else likes, and our scope of knowledge on something may or may not be as broad as someone else's. So that's why I use reviews, and that's my personal goal for doing reviews is to kind of just put something else out there and try not to sound like everyone else, that's just trying to give a homogenized general opinion on things. And so I definitely hope to do that with this film, because I'm a huge Black Panther comic book fan, and I feel like I can provide a little something that you don't get from some of the other reviewers. So with that said, here's my review. First things first, I liked how the film started off with kind of like a quick telling of Wakanda and its origins for those that have never seen the movie. It's a good jumping on point to kind of get an idea, and it's told in a voiceover from T'Chaka talking to a young T'Challa who asks him, to tell him the story of Wakanda. And you find out that it's a country in Africa that had a meteorite hit the country, or hit the area, and that meteorite just happened to be chock full of this wondrous metal called vibranium, and that helped spearhead the development of their technology and their advancements, and they became so technologically advanced that they wanted to hold on to their knowledge, and so they sequestered and secreted themselves. They secreted themselves, and hid themselves from the rest of the world, but yet sent out spies to infiltrate various areas of different societies all over the world, to kind of keep tabs on what's going on, so that they could better protect themselves. One thing they don't mention in this origin story is that Wakanda is a country that even though it's been invaded, it's never been conquered, it's never been colonized by any other outside force. So, something that I kind of wish they had emphasized a bit more, and that's why they sent out their spies and whatnot. But, I'm not going to get too much into that right now yet, because I'd be delving into spoiler territory, and I want to make the first half of this review spoiler free. And when I get into the spoiler stuff, I'll make sure to mention it and put a warning on the screen, so those watching and listening will know, so that they can, if they don't want anything spoiled for them, they could stop. Which you should have already seen the movie already if you're listening to this review. But just in case, I'll let you know. and then proceed to spoil the shit out of this movie, because I have some things I need to talk about that I can only really talk about without spoiling, and I have to spoil the movie in order to do so. So that being said, this movie is a visual treat. It is very, very beautiful. I love how they depict Africa. It's the savannas and the countryside. It's shown in a very beautiful light, as it should be. Wakanda itself, just like with, say, the Tim Burton Batman movies, and how Gotham is a character, it's very gothic looking. There's gargoyles on like all the big buildings and stuff. They really did the damn thing with Wakanda, which I did a video years ago about what would make a Black Panther movie great and what they would need to do to make it great. And one of those things I mentioned was how they depict Wakanda. And I figured if they could do what they did with Asgard, because Asgard was like a sword and sandals looking, Lord of the Rings, Skyrim looking place in the original text and books and stories and stuff. But in the Marvel movies, they made that place a technological wonder. And I figured, well, if they can do that with Asgard, they can do that with Wakanda. And they did the damn thing with Wakanda. I went to go see the movie with my homeboy Strident, and he was like, man, this looks like something out of Final Fantasy. And I was like, yeah, it's fucking awesome. Like, we were both kind of geeking out about it, and pretty impressed with how they depicted it. And it felt like they took some of the more recent looks of Wakanda from, say, the comics in the 2000s, and some of the older books too. There are some very technological looking depictions in some of the other comics as well, and they just went off with it, and it just looks like this great blend of nature and contemporary technology, and it just looked fantastic. It definitely has its own identity, and I loved it for that. I wish that Wakanda existed in real life. Like, I always wished it existed in real life just from the comics, but seeing it on the big screen and movie form kind of helped reinstill those feelings I had for like wishing a place like this actually existed somewhere in Africa. Even though Africa does have parts of Africa, like in Nigeria and Ghana, they have metropolises and skyscrapers and buildings, like, just like something you'd see in New York. But I want to see like Wakanda in real life now, more than I did before. And so, yeah, it looked fantastic. As far as the casting goes, they nailed it. I never felt like anybody was miscast. I never felt like anybody underperformed or overperformed or overacted. Everything felt right. Great direction by Coogler, but couple that with great actors picked for the roles. T'Challa is the Black Panther. I'm sorry. Chadwick Boseman is the Black Panther, just like how Chris Evans is Captain America. Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. Wesley Snipes will always be Blade. Everyone else would pale in comparison to how they pulled off the role. And I love that. And, great. He does it. He knocks it out. Chadwick Boseman knocks it out of the ballpark. Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger was very compelling. I'm going to get to him a little later because it's going to be spoilerific in order for me to fully talk about what I want to talk about with that character. But very, very great character. Lupita Nyong'o was great as Nakia, of course. Danai Gurira was awesome. I mean, you all know her as Michonne in The Walking Dead. She brought a lot of that stoicism and badassery to her role as Okoye. If anybody was going to see this film to see strong Black women in heroic roles, you're definitely going to get that with this movie, because both of them did the damn thing. They were smart, independent. They were just all kinds of positivity just flowing from their characters and just from the movie in general. I was really digging that. Martin Freeman was funny when he needed to be, but he played that CIA off CIA operative role pretty well. I dug his character. I was looking forward to see how they were going to portray him after, since I'm a big fan of the Christopher Priest run of the Black Panther comics, and he was done pretty well. Daniel Kaluuya, sorry, from Get Out fame, of course, did great as Wakabi. I have some issues with that character as well, but that's spoiler territory, and I'll get into my thoughts and the pros and cons of that, the pros and cons that I feel of that when I get to that as well. Letitia Wright, I'm sorry, as Shuri, she was awesome as well. She was like a super smart millennial Wakandan, if such a thing were to exist. I feel like that would be Shuri's portrayal in this movie. She was funny when she needed to be. She was really smart. I liked her role and how it fit with some of the genre borrowing that they did with this movie, which I'll get into in a little bit as well. Winston Duke was surprising to me, not because of the actor, but because of the character he played. He's M'Baku, and for those of you that read the comics, M'Baku is he's from the Jabari tribe in Wakanda, and he's also been kind of like he's been a foe to the Black Panther, and he's a racial stereotype, negative connotation character, better known as Man-Ape. I'll try to remember to put an image of what that character looks like in the comics and what he looked like in the movies. I was when I found out they were putting M'Baku in the movie, because I had told somebody a long time ago, I was like, yo, if they put Man-Ape in this movie, and I said it as a joke, if they put him in this movie, I would walk out of the film because I don't want to see that kind of BS handled in this film. Not only did they do it, but they actually made it good, like positive in a way, and I was surprised. They took something that was a negative racial connotation and they turned it into something positive and actually kind of compelling. And I mean, I gotta hand it to the people who put together this movie, everybody, to actually pull that off. Like, it actually made me want to see more of M'Baku, which was something I never thought I'd ever say because of the character's origins. And and Duke's portrayal, he was funny when he needed to be, but he was super serious, and it worked, and nothing ever felt out of place. Like, his comedic timing was just on point in this film with that character. I mean, he made me laugh out loud, as well as a lot of people who were the crowd that was in the movie laughed as well, and it was enjoyable, and I was kind of I was very, very surprised. Not even kind of surprised. I was very surprised by his character. Angela Bassett still looking so good, and as Ramonda, yeah, man, I've always been a big fan of her work. I wish she's one of those people that I feel is underused. They should have brought her back as Amanda Waller. Even though it wouldn't have helped Suicide Squad, I still wish they had brought her back, because I thought she made a good Amanda Waller in that horrible Green Lantern movie. But I'm happy that she was brought in as Ramonda, because she brought the element of grace and just cadence to the character and to the movie. She felt like a queen, looking at her and her costumes, and then when she took off her headdress and she had the white hair, I was just like, oh my God, why couldn't she have been Storm back in the day when I wanted to see an X-Men movie, because I always felt like Angela Bassett would have made the perfect Storm, way more perfect than Halle Berry. And then to see her with the white dreads, I was like, oh my God, it's Storm. But it's not Storm. It's not Storm in this movie. Forrest Whitaker was cool, as well as Zuri. I actually thought it was a cool idea because there's some flashback sequences in the film of T'Chaka and Zuri, and they actually casted Forrest Whitaker's son to play the young version of Zuri in the flashback sequences. His name is Denzel Whitaker, and I was actually surprised because I didn't know that at first. When I saw the movie, I was like, wow, that flashback like of Zuri, like they got Forrest Whitaker's eye. Like he's got that eye, that lazy eye. And I was like, how'd they do that? I was like, is that CG? And then I'm reading the credits and I was like, oh shit, they just cast his son as his younger version of himself. That's pretty awesome. And then they did the same thing with T'Chaka, who's played by John Kani. They got his son, Atandwa Kani is his son, and they cast him as young T'Chaka. And I thought that was actually a pretty cool idea, just because you don't see that done often, because you obviously sometimes you can't do that. The last time they did that was in Straight Outta Compton when they had Ice Cube's son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., play the young version of Ice Cube, and I thought, well, that's cool that they did it again for this film as well. So yeah, like I said, good casting choices all around. Andy Serkis was very, very enjoyable as Ulysses Claw. I think he cranked, like I thought he was enjoyable in Age of Ultron, but he cranked it up for this film, and he took what would have been a generic one-note character and just gave him life. And I think like anybody else, any of the more well-established tour de force actors or whatever, I don't think they would have been able to do what he did, because they would have taken that villain role and kind of just gave it a passable treatment. They would be like, oh, I get to play the bad guy, and they would have handled it, I feel like, more generically than Serkis did. I think Andy Serkis just really he made the character charismatic in a charismatic devil-may-care type of villain, but only in a way that he could do. And I think a lot of that comes from his background in motion capture. I think he brought a lot of those skills into just his portrayal of this character, and he was just very fun, and he was chewing the scenery in the right way. Sometimes actors can chew scenery and it not be very good, but in this particular case, he did a really good job, and it made me want to see more of him in the film than what we got. I don't want to go through the entire long cast list. I just want to say that everybody was cast. They all fulfilled their purposes. Everybody brought their A game, and it was done just very, very well. As far as the visuals, I mean, I loved the CG. I don't have a problem with a movie like this being CG heavy, like a lot of other people kind of say whenever they saw the trailers for the film. I mean, how else are you going to portray Wakanda? You could build a lot of set miniatures and stuff like that, sure, but some things just need CG. Some of the camera angles that they were pulling with with the L cam and having Black Panther, blending it and turning it at angles and having the whole thing being filmed sideways, him running across buildings and swinging around, different objects and pulling cars and stuff, using his strength to pull cars in these tight turns that are impossible, making the impossible possible. Just some of the stuff you saw him do as the Panther was pretty cool. It was imaginative and it felt fresh. All the elements, because everybody talks about Marvel's got a formula and Marvel's become so formulaic. Everybody says that, but then you ask them, what is that formula? Nobody can ever tell you what the formula is. They just heard somebody else say it. They want to sound like they're in the know, so they just start regurgitating that sort of, those talking points, and I'm kind of tired of that. But they took certain formulas and elements and they did it and they kept it fresh, and I'm always all for that. If you take a plot device or a trope and you breathe something, you do something different that I haven't quite seen before with it, then I'll give it a pass, because that's good storytelling. You can only, a story will always have a beginning, middle, and an end. You can't ever really deviate from that. There's ways you can play with it so that that beginning, middle, and end still remain interesting. And I think this movie does that very well. The action sequences, like I said, were imaginative. I was pretty impressed with Denai's spear work. I mean, I know she can weld a katana, as Michonne in The Walking Dead, but there were parts in the fights where I was actually like, oh shit, ooh, and I had ooh and on, oh snap moments, and all that, and this movie definitely brought that as well. Hollywood still does that thing I hate with fight scenes where the camera's too close and they do just too many cuts. This one wasn't as bad, but I wish they would pull back the camera, let us see the action, give us longer hand-to-hand exchanges when necessary, and not cut as much. I know cutting makes things seem like it's more exciting than it actually is, but there's a lot of excitement in the movement that is being lost because of all the cuts being made, and this film kind of does that to an extent, and I wish they did a little bit better than that. But once again, it's what you do see though is very well done and very well executed. The tone of the movie is awesome. Like I have to go back to the video that I did over 5 years ago. I think it was over 5 years ago. It was just after Captain America Winter Soldier came out, and I posed this question about doing a Black Panther movie, and I talked about how if they're gonna do a Black Panther movie, the tone has to be handled with the same kind of care and intensity, the tonal intensity that you had in Winter Soldier. And I think you got exactly that in this film. It was at times it almost felt even more serious than Winter Soldier did. But then when they did put in the comedic elements to it, somebody would crack a joke or there'd be a one-liner or something, it never felt out of place. It never snapped me out of the film. It never made me feel disjointed in any way. And I think a lot of that has to do with the direction, with the actors, and with the way the pacing of the film as a whole. All these things kind of played together to not make anything feel out of place and to make it all mesh and work in a way that makes the movie that much more enjoyable to me, and I hope a lot of other people notice that as well. The plot wise, they address some issues that I've even had people kind of bring to me just because they know how much of a big fan I am of Black Panther, and then I know the comics pretty well. And some people had come up to me. I had some coworkers come up to me. I've had a couple questions from some subscribers ask me, if that didn't know too much about Black Panther. You have this country that's never been invaded. It's the most technologically advanced country on the planet. Why haven't they done enough to help others? And I kind of didn't want to answer too much because even the comic books don't do a whole lot to answer that. I think one time in the Hudlin run, somebody in T'Challa's inner circle had asked T'Challa and some of the other people, why don't we give America the cure for cancer? Because we have it. And then somebody else said, well, why should we bother to give them the cure? Because when they're just going to turn around and charge the people that need it an exorbitant amount of money in order to get the cure, they're just going to take it and do something really corrupt with it and exploit people for it, and we'll be aiding them by doing that. So for them, for that person, it felt better to not do anything at all. And that kind of theme gets talked about heavily in this movie. And I think for the most part, they addressed it pretty well. And, before I get into spoilers, because that's something I will definitely have to spoil in order to elaborate on it. But I just want to say that with all the hype surrounded with this movie and all the anticipation, and because everybody's coming to see this film for different reasons. Some people want to see black people finally done right in an action movie. Some people want to see themselves represented in a superhero film properly, because there's been a long history in Hollywood of minorities just not getting their just due portrayals in films, and we're finally getting it with Black Panther. And a lot of people are like, oh my god, I hope this is the one that kind of shows that this can be done, and that this is a justifiable execution of how to do it and how to do it right. And I think for the most part they did do that. If you came to see your favorite hero portrayed in his own movie, you get that. You get the MCU version of that. You don't necessarily get the comic book version of that. At least for me, it wasn't fully what I wanted to see as far as T'Challa's portrayal. But that's another video for another time that I have planned to do, because I had to separate myself from the knowledge that I have of the book, just like I think anybody else would have to do when they're invested in the literary material, and then they watch the film version of it. You kind of have to pull back on what you know in order to watch this and judge it just by itself as a film. And I feel that's what I kind of had to do, in order to not just to not come down hard for it, but to criticize it for things that necessarily it shouldn't be criticized, because they establish certain things and they leave certain other things out, and they leave those things out because of the kind of story they're trying to tell. So in that sense, I get why they did what they did, from a film standpoint, because I consider myself a casual cinephile. I don't watch everything just to watch it and to have an opinion about it. I watch the things that I like, and then I give my opinion on them. And this would be one of those cases. So as a film, I think it will work. If you're coming to see a great story, something that with subject matter that hasn't really ever been touched in any other movie, let alone a comic book movie, that in and of itself is a really cool thing, because comics have always kind of tackled subject matter that was considered taboo. A lot of comics were tackling sex and drugs and lifestyle choices, race, and you have this movie kind of tackling some racial issues and some cultural issues as well. And that's what a comic book, that's one of the things a comic book does. So in that sense, this movie does do that. And I think for the most part, it poses this question. It offers its own answer, but it's not the answer, I guess I could say, because it's a complex thing, and plus this is a fictional world similar to ours. So the answer it gives is it's realistic in that world, but I don't think it would be completely realistic in ours, because obviously Wakanda doesn't exist. But I do like that they tackled that anyway. But that being said, I think this is a well done film. I think this is a well done addition to the MCU, and you should definitely totally go see this movie. You'll have a really great time. If you watch these superhero movies for great villains, this is definitely going to be one of those times, because like Killmonger is a pretty good villain. I'll get more to that in the spoiler section of of the review, which is going to be starting like right now. So, you've all been warned. We're dropping into spoiler territory. Dip out, go see this movie if you haven't already, and then come back and watch this portion. Cause yeah, it's spoiler time. Now I talked about certain characters, like W'Kabi. In the comics, W'Kabi is T'Challa's very, very good friend. And in this movie, he kind of is played like he starts off as a friend, but he feels slighted by T'Challa because T'Challa promised him that he would get Claw and he failed, and he feels like T'Challa is following in the footsteps of his father because he didn't go after Claw when he had the chance, and he didn't get revenge because Claw killed some of his relatives and his family, and he wants justice. He wanted to come with T'Challa to South Korea to track Claw down and apprehend him, but T'Challa told him he needs him there to guard Wakanda, and he'll bring him back alive to be handled justly there. And of course, the operation in South Korea fails, and T'Challa is given a startling revelation that he has family that he didn't know about outside of Wakanda. And it goes back to the flashback of young T'Chaka as Black Panther with a younger Zuri, and they're spies, dealing with some spies, because one of the things that I always thought was kind of questionable, dipping back to Age of Ultron when they first introduced Ulysses Claw, was how in the heck did he get out of Wakanda with vibranium? Because I know in the comics he tried to steal vibranium, but I was like, how did he do it in the movies? And they never addressed it, and I thought, well, that's really stupid, because Wakanda is this place that has never been invaded. Here's a guy who got in and barely got out with his life, but got out nonetheless, with a half ton of vibranium. And so how did he do it? And it turns out he had help on the inside, and that help was from a Wakandan spy that was sent out into America, to not only to spy on the goings on of the world, but he sympathized with the plight of the African American man, or the black man in America, and he wanted to help them because Wakanda has the resources to help these people get their freedom and to fight for their equal rights. But Wakanda doesn't do anything to help them, and he wanted to, so he helped Claw get the vibranium out so that he could make the weapons that black people would need in order to fight back for their freedom. And because of that, T'Chaka wanted to see with his own eyes whether he was the spy or not, even though he pretty much already knows, because he sent Zuri to spy on him as well. And in a bout of rage, Killmonger, older Daddy Killmonger, I guess we'll call him, pulls out a gun to shoot Zuri for his betrayal, and T'Chaka kills him on the spot. He doesn't even hesitate and kills him, and that's crazy because it's his own brother that he kills, but he kills him because Wakanda comes first. The protection of Wakanda comes before your own family, and so that's a really big deal, and it's a big deal to Zuri as well because he put his own life ahead of his brother's, and it's a debt that he felt ultimately he could never repay, and so that's why he keeps the secret for T'Chaka. But they end up leaving T'Chaka's son, who sees them from the basketball court leaving, because what they didn't know was that he already knew about Wakanda from his father, and they killed him, and he knew who killed him. He knew, even as a child, he knew who killed his dad, and that spurred him on a lifelong mission of revenge, and feeling left behind by his own people. So he trained his entire life and prepared and planned. He pretty much pulled a T'Challa, because T'Challa is the guy who prepares for the unknown. he has contingency plans for contingency plans to have contingency plans for those contingency plans. That's how T'Challa works. And so he kind of did that on his own to put things in motion so that he could put himself in a position to overthrow the king, claim his birthright, and take the weapons and tech in Wakanda to go out and help the disenfranchised by literally any means necessary. He was ready to go to war. He essentially turns into the thing he hates, but he still feels he's doing it for all the right reasons. So it makes him an interesting character, and it makes him a complex character because he wants to do something that would be considered heroic, but he's going about it in all the wrong ways, in one of the most jacked up ways possible, because he's willing to just kill to get to his objective. But you also sympathize with him because he feels because he's been abandoned by his own people, and I think that makes him a character with layers. And a lot of people, like, even when the Black Panther premiere came out, and you saw all the tweets people were posting of the movie, and a lot of people were saying he was like Killmonger's character is Loki level, as far as like great characters, great villains go. I will agree with that. I think some people will say he's not as good as Loki, but I think they will say that only because Loki is a character that has been in like 10 different Marvel movies. Like he's been in just about every Thor movie. I think he's been in every Thor movie. He was in Avengers. I think he was in the first Avengers. He's had multiple movies to get fleshed out. And so, sometimes he plays the good guy, a little bit of a good guy with a ulterior motive. Most of the times he's playing the mischievous bad guy. And, he's had moments where you got to see a different side of him. He's by far the most fleshed out villain that the MCU has had so far. Just because of the sheer amount of movies you've seen him in. Killmonger has only been in this one movie, and unless they decide to retcon his demise, that may be the only movie you see him in. There's ways they could bring him back. I'm not going to go into that because that delves more into the comic book territory that they could borrow from in a sequel, but blah, 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 whatever. I'm not going to go into all that. He's still an interesting character to me, just because of what he's gone through. Like, and he's a relatable character for those, for just about, I think you can find one thing to relate to from just about any character, minus maybe the Joker. A lot of people say they relate to the Joker, and I think they're nuts, but I think you can relate. Anybody who has been abandoned, anybody who feels left behind or outcast can relate to Killmonger in some way, or empathize with him in that way, with feelings of abandonment and what have you. And I think that's part of what makes him an interesting character. If you don't feel anything for him, then you either don't get it, and whoever's watching their reviews should immediately stop watching that review, because everything now that they say will be considered questionable. Because if you don't get the character of Killmonger, you probably didn't get the whole movie either. And that being said, you may also be racist. Latter jokes aside, the former would be true still. You don't get it if you don't understand Killmonger's reasoning for why he did what he did. And I think that's what makes him an interesting character. I think a lot of black people, a lot of African Americans will understand I only understand it because I'm first generation Nigerian. I wasn't abandoned by my family. My parents are in my life. Well, my mom still is in my life. My father passed away a couple years ago, but I understand where other black people are coming from, not knowing where they come from, not truly knowing where they come from because their ancestry due to slavery and Jim Crow and the system essentially has erased where erased their black people's true origins, African roots, and that is something that I think is something that we all deal with as African Americans in this country. And so that is a big that's a big storytelling element that is used throughout this film. Even in the intro, in the montage of Wakanda, they show the world moving on, whereas Wakanda has stayed where they're at, protecting themselves. And you see images of slaves being loaded onto the ships, being taken to America. And you see later on in the flashback to 1992 what Killmonger's father's trying to do. And Lupita Nyong'o's character even brings up to T'Challa, because she's been in the outside world as a spy, saying, we need to do more with the resources we have to help those that are unable to help themselves, because the system has been built to keep them down. And I mean, it was those types of monologues and the ideas that made me really wish Wakanda existed, more so than just from the fantastical aspects of the city and what it is. I think all black people at some point have wished there was a way for them to fight back to get equality, or to get the simple opportunities that everyone else has access to, just to be treated fairly. I think every black person has felt this way at some point in their life, and so to see them cover this in this movie the way they did was actually quite impressive, because most people expect to go see a comic book movie and just have a good time and watch some fun action sequences, see some comedy, and then go home. But this movie made you think, because they've covered a subject that does not get covered in film like it should, and it gets covered in a comic book movie nonetheless. So I think that is one of those things that I was not expecting to see, that actually surprised me, and it made me like this movie even more as a film, because that subject matter is something that I don't think it takes the right kind of person to tell it. And I think I didn't look to see who wrote the screenplay for it, but I think they did a good job posing these questions. And I mean, I know Coogler was one of the people that wrote it, and I guess Joe Robert Cole's another writer, and I think they did a pretty good job weaving these elements in, and keeping it makes the movie not feel formulaic. It takes the formula and adds something to it and keeps it fresh, which is what I've been saying since the beginning of this review. When you do these types of things, it also helps make the movie stand out from all the other films as well. And I just I think with the very end of with the end of the climactic battle between Panther and Killmonger, and you hear Killmonger's the final thing he says before he dies. He's still an outcast, and he still feels he's an outcast. He tells T'Challa, even though now he's finally seen his motherland, it's still not his motherland, and he still feels the outcast. And he told him, bury me at sea with all the other black bodies that were dumped out of the boat, out of the slave boats, because that didn't make it, because those are my people. And then he dies right after that, and that was pretty emotional. Like, I mean, I wasn't crying, but it's one of those things where it's like, man, if you didn't feel something, if you didn't feel some kind of way after hearing that, then you don't get it. You're not human, or you're a racist, and I don't know what you were watching this movie for in the first place. But yeah, if you know, and there's gonna be people that don't get it, and that's fine. This is what this review is here for. It's to kind of open your eyes to that. So, I mean, that's gonna pretty much do it. I think this is a solid entry into the MCU, and I can't wait for the sequel. You know, barring some choices they made with the comic book lore and some things that they omitted in order to tell the story they wanted to tell. Because if they implemented all those things and then told this story, then it would create some huge plot holes. And like I said, I had to separate my comic book self from the cinephile self, which I think you kind of have to do with every one of these movies that's based off of a popular literary work. Because if you start to make comparisons, then all of these movies would start to fall apart. Like at the very seams, they would fall apart. So, as a film, and with the subject matter they were trying to cover, and with the way they were covering it, it works based on how they wanted to do it. Are there ways where they could have brought in those more of those comic book elements, especially with Bast and how the heart-shaped herb works, because they changed that up a bit for this movie. If they had brought those in, I still feel like it could have worked in a way, but I understand why they didn't do it. So, like I said, this movie is great. It's not perfect. It meets a lot of the expectations I had for this film. It doesn't meet some of the others, which I'll get into in a little bit, but that's because I'm getting into that from a comic book standpoint, and that video will be coming up soon. So if you're interested, stay tuned for that. If you liked this review, please hit that like button. I want to hear your thoughts on the movie as well. So, you know, post that stuff in the comments. I will definitely get back to you. I want to compare notes. I want to talk about what you liked about it, what you didn't like, what they could have done better. Because all that stuff is interesting. You know, I want to hear what other people have to say. So please leave your comments, your congratulations, your questions, your queries, your contractions, your rants. I want to hear all of that. So, you know, post that in the comments section. If you liked it, if you liked the video, hit that like button, share it with your friends, hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more content, and I will catch you guys on the next video. My name is Agent O, and I'm out. Peace.